Hey, book lovers. My name is Em, and I want to talk about books. And cats. Welcome back, book lovers. It's the final episode of Season 2, and I've got a bunch of stuff to talk about. First, I want to thank you all for listening to me babble about books again for another season. I appreciate you all so much, and I'm so grateful to be able to do this. It's amazing. So most of this episode is going to be about books, including my top reads from 2022. But before I get into all the book goodness, let's do something cat-related. So my family has been playing a new game recently called Kitty Letter, and it's made by The Oatmeal. I'm sure you've probably heard of him. He makes awesome comics as well as other games such as Exploding Kittens, which is another great cat-themed game. My family loves games. We love board games, card games, video games, all of them. Especially this time of year when we're on holiday break, we tend to play a lot of games together. This one Andy found, and it's on the phone. And as I said, it's called Kitty Letter. It works kind of like Plants vs. Zombies, except you're sending cats across a yard to attack your neighbor's house, and he's doing the same to you. You send the cats by making words out of random letters that you get. So it's got kind of a Scrabble element to it, too. There's a single-player mode, which has a pretty simple story mode that's a lot of fun. And then they also have arcade mode, which is fun, but it gets intense pretty quickly. The cats are coming fast and furious during that one. There's also a multiplayer mode where you can play against strangers or friends. So we have been dueling each other in Kitty Letter for about a week now. I'm not sponsored by this in any way. I just really love this game, and it's got cats and words, so it's perfect for this podcast. All right, so let's get into the book stuff. So as you may know, if you've been listening to me for any amount of time or following my Instagram, I'm a big fan of Book of the Month, and every year they have their members vote on the best books of the year. And they pick a top 5, and then out of that top 5, they pick their winner for Book of the Year. So they have a BFF program, which I'm obviously a part of. And one of the benefits of being a BFF is that every year you get to pick from the top 5, and you get one book for free. I love this. It's one of the awesome benefits of Book of the Month. But this year I kind of messed up. I've mentioned before that I have memory issues, and, I read quite a few books for the podcast, and they don't all stick with me. Even the really good ones sometimes don't stick with me because I read a lot of the same type of books, so it's hard for things to stand out in my brain. Especially around the holidays, things are already pretty scattered in there. Anyway, I get the notice to pick my free book out of the top 5. And I go through all of them, and they all look kind of interesting, but the one that really interests me is called A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. And it sounds awesome. And I ordered another book from her as well as my December book of the month, All the Dangerous Things, which will be coming in Season 3 because I just barely started it. So I get these 2 books, and I'm super excited. I love getting that blue box every month, especially when there's more than one book in it. And what I do to decide my top reads of the year, because I have such memory issues, is that when I read a book that really, really hits me, that I'm like, this is one of my top reads, they go on a separate shelf. And so at the end of the year, I have a collection of all the books, or at least most of them. Sometimes I hand out the good ones. I have a collection of all of my favorite reads of the year, even if I don't necessarily remember them. So I bring over the, dozen or so books that I have on my shelf, and I put them on the other side of my desk. and I start listing them in my notes. And I'm like, oh, I accidentally put A Flicker in the Dark over on this pile somehow. And then I turn to the other side of the desk, and there's another copy of A Flicker in the Dark. I already read it. I probably voted for it. And I don't remember. It must have been good. It was on the shelf. It was so good I got it twice. I just thought that was funny. Oh, my memory. Fun stuff. Anyway, so I now have 2 copies of A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham, so I doubly recommend that one. Anyway, my other top reads of 2022. Let's talk about them. The first one I want to talk about, I am putting in a separate category because it is a collection of short stories, and it was so good. It honestly inspired me to start writing more short stories, and that turned into the book that I have coming out in January, 3:33 a.m., which is a collection of 5 short stories about the monsters that are within and without. Anyway, the book is called Ghost Summer. It's by Tananarive Due. I hope I'm saying that name right. I probably messed it up every time. But it is just incredible. And there was one story in it in particular that really stuck with me where the main character slowly turns into the evil monster during the story. And it's so brilliantly done. It's fantastic. If you love good short stories, Ghost Summer. It's amazing. It gets its own category. And if you want some other short stories with a monsterish theme, January 13th, 2023, which is a Friday the 13th, 3:33 a.m. will be out. So stay tuned. So excluding that one, I had another 10 books set aside of my best reads of 2022. And I'm going to go over my top 5 out of those 10. So honorable mention goes to The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager, No Exit by Taylor Adams, Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Booley, and of course A Flicker in the Dark because I liked it enough to get it twice and probably voted for it. But my memory is Swiss cheese. Anyway, it was good, still not quite in my top 5. Okay, so now let's get into my top 5 reads. These are in no particular order, but they were all just fantastic. So the first one is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book was phenomenal. It is the night of the Riva family's big summer party, and by morning, their mansion will be in flames, and so will the lives of the Riva children. It is a fantastic read. Then we have Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins. This one involves a strange small island beyond the reaches of technology, 6 visitors who all have secrets that they are desperate to keep quiet, and now it's all going to come out. The ending of this one is just fantastic. I highly recommend. Number 3 is What the Fireflies Knew by Kai Harris. This one was a departure from my usual genre. It is a beautiful and moving tale that's told from the perspective of a young girl who is sent to live with her grandfather for the summer, along with her older sister. It weaves through the trials of adolescence, the death of a parent, distance growing between sisters, racism, what makes a family, and also just some of the sad realizations that we have to face as we grow up. This one is beautifully written, and I had the opportunity to listen to the author discuss the book, which was very exciting. I always love to hear them talk about their work and see the brain behind the words. This one is an absolute must-read as far as I'm concerned. So good. Next is The Lies I Tell by Julie Clark. And, this one. This is a story about a female con artist, a very, very good female con artist, and the woman who wants to get her revenge. She's been waiting a long time for the con artist to resurface, and she's ready to destroy this woman's life just like hers was destroyed. Only as they become close, things change. The con artist is after revenge of her own. This is such an excellent book. So good. And last but not least is Darling Girl by Liz Mikulski. I loved this one so much. If I had to pick an absolute favorite read for the year, this one would be it for me. It takes the well-known story of Peter Pan and it plops it into reality and reveals all the dark underpinnings of fairy tales. It also addresses heavy real-life topics of grief, addiction, sacrifice, aging, motherhood. It gets really heavy in places, but it is so brilliantly done. And there's just a little touch of magic amongst the darkness. I love, love, love this book. Highly recommend, and this is my favorite read for 2022, for sure. And that's my top 5. I honestly recommend every book that I've mentioned today. I have had a year of great reads, that's for sure. Now I'm going to take a quick break, and when I come back, I have a new chapter of my weekly writing project. Stay tuned. Welcome back, book lovers. So I am back to my weekly writing project. I am working on the book Ocean Eyes right now. Ocean Eyes is the second book in the Verdant Valley series. The first one is called Peace Tree, and if you've been listening for long enough, you have heard the very, very, very rough draft of that book as well. They will eventually be released in a more, edited format. Because sometimes when you're going week to week, a chapter at a time, sometimes you lose a few threads here and there and things kind of get a little confusing. But that's why it's a first draft. Anyway, back to Ocean Eyes. This week I have chapter 12 for you. Enjoy. Yada fell for a long time in the dark. It felt impossibly long, but she had learned quite young that nothing was impossible. Not with magic. Of course, magic also made other things nearly impossible, like being accepted by society. Yada had also learned how cruel people could be when she was young, before she had learned how to hide her abilities. Morena had taught her that. Masking her magic to ease the villagers had helped, but no one wanted to get too close even now, even after they had chosen her for the most revered position of apprentice to the Death Witch. Maybe friendship was the only truly impossible thing. For her, anyway. Yada put on a sunny face to the world and did the best she could to lead a good, helpful life, but she was bitterly lonely inside. Most of the time she only spoke to Morena, and that wasn't quite friendship. She admired the woman greatly, and Morena had always been incredibly kind to her, but she feared the woman as well. She knew only a percentage of what Morena did, and Yada knew what kind of fierce heartlessness the magic required. She had time to ponder all of this as she fell. The initial terror had passed, and she grew impatient with her never-ending descent. There was a strong magic in this dark place, and she could do nothing about her situation. It was frustrating. Yada had never been this powerless before, not even when she'd been left alone in the forest as a young child. Her stepmother had underestimated her abilities, while also fearing them enough to leave a child alone in the woods at night. Now Yada was at the mercy of whoever wielded this powerful magic. She thought that if they intended to kill her, they would have by now, and she was impatient for this part to be over. Whatever awaited her, it had to be better than this slow, maddening silence. Yada thought about Morena and the sudden appearance of her cousin. Meeting Rhea had been surreal. Yada was fascinated by all of the cousins, the children of death. As a kid, she'd been obsessed with the rumors about them. They had brought peace to the valley and the lands beyond. And then they had been shunned for it. The rumors painted them as monsters, ghouls of grotesque appearance and massive stature. When Yada had first been presented with the role of apprentice to the Death Witch, she hadn't slept for a week. The Death Witch was a fearful creature who only took the shape of a woman when coming to the village. It was said her actual appearance caused immediate death to any who saw it, and she would keep those souls in her private collection, never taking them across the seas to the lands beyond. Of course, Morena was nothing like that, and Yada had never seen her look any different than the striking woman she always was. The real tale of the Peace Tree was much less creative than the rumors, but it was just as exciting. Yada had always been especially interested in Rhea. She seemed different from the others. separate and more powerful. Morena was the secret keeper and knew quite a lot more than anyone else, but Rhea knew everything. Without warning, Yada suddenly plummeted through the air, gaining speed at a breathtaking rate. Terror squeezed her heart for just a moment before she made impact. She landed in what seemed to be an enormous pillow. It wrapped her in its cushioned embrace, and she felt stillness for the first time in what felt like forever. The fabric around her was soft and velvety, and she lay there, running her fingers over the softness and trying to decide what to do next. She slowly became aware that she could see. It was faint. The room was dark, but everything had a bit of a shimmer to it, and she could make out the shapes of the rocky walls surrounding her. She had always had this talent, but it had always been faint. The shimmer here was soft, but it was much more defined. She could see almost as well as she normally could before. Her first task was getting out of this massive pillow. The air was lighter here. The magic was less oppressive, and Yada found she could move just fine. She glanced around and noticed one area of the wall had been chiseled into the shape of an eye. Its deep greenish shimmer almost camouflaged it against the stone. Yada began clambering toward it. The pillow was immense, and she ended up rolling to the edge because it was easier than trying to crawl. She came to the edge suddenly, and the drop was taller than she'd expected. She hit the ground with a jolt and laid there for a moment, rubbing her hip bone, which had taken the brunt of her weight when she landed. She sat up and faced the opening that had been cut into the stone. It was another winding passage, about the width of 2 people. The walls glittered with shiny black stone, and a greenish shimmer lit the way for her. Yada hesitated. Somewhere in the darkness there was a skittering sound, and then a hiss that sent a shiver through her. She got to her feet and gave the passageway another long, appraising look. There was something hovering on the edge of her consciousness. A bit of information she'd learned long ago and was now just out of her grasp. There wasn't time to figure it out, though. It didn't feel like a warning. The passageway gave her no feeling of danger. The sounds behind her, however, were growing closer and louder. More feet were skittering in the darkness. There were hisses and shrieks and a low wail that put ice in her veins. Yada took a deep breath and stepped into the entrance of the passage. The horrible cacophony died out, and the silence that followed wrapped around her gently, like a warm hug. There was light in the passageway. Bright balls of golden light danced along the walls, which were smooth white stone that glittered with flecks of gold. After so long in the darkness, it burned Yada's eyes at first, but they slowly adjusted. As she began to follow the passage even further into the depths, Yada could hear the soft sounds of music below. It lifted her spirits and gave her a boost of energy. She had a bit of a spring in her step again. She felt lighter than she had in years, since she'd first laid hands on the book. She followed the music and the dancing lights, which seemed to move along with the song. And then she heard an enchanting sound join in. A low, sweet voice full of sorrow and beauty wove a melody through the gentle music. And Yada's heart leapt at the sound. She quickened her pace. There was nothing to fear here, and she absolutely had to find the owner of this voice. She descended the passage rapidly, passing doors here and there. The voice was further down, and she had no other objective now. Whoever was singing was calling to her. Yada was supposed to meet them. The path ended abruptly at another door. It was made of the same shiny black stone she had seen at the entrance, and the door handle was a smooth, pearly white. The door was partially open. The singing stopped when Yada did. She stood before the massive door, feeling the powerful presence of whoever was behind it. She had dreamed this. Long ago and many times since. Over and over she stood before this door, knowing someone waited for her behind it. Only in her dream she was never able to open it. She always woke up when her hand touched the handle. Yada took a deep breath and placed her hand on the door. The stone was cold and smooth under her fingers. She grasped the handle and waited. Nothing happened. She leaned against the heavy door and began to push it open. It was time. And that is the end of Chapter 12, book lovers. And it's the end of Season 2 of M's Books and Cats podcast. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you for listening this whole time. And I will be back in 2023 with Season 3 and a bunch of great new stuff to talk about and great new books to read. Have a wonderful holiday season. Take care of yourselves. And keep an eye out for 3:33 a.m. coming to you on the first Friday the 13th of 2023. Thank you all so much for listening. And until next time, keep reading.